This week's Inner Circle episode is with Jake Kauffman, an incredible spiritual mentor, a leader in the entrepreneurial space, and an author of Let Love In. He's got an incredible experience that he discusses in his early teenage years that created a boatload of trauma and manifested itself in all sorts of ways: personal, professional, physical, financial. He's now on the other side of that pain, and he's helping the world unpack theirs. Who is Jake Kauffman?
Yeah, that's a good question. I used to say that I am, because I do believe that whatever follows I am follows you. That I am a powerful, courageous, authentic leader. But now I would honestly just say that I am who I am, right? I've got nothing to prove, I've got nothing to protect.
And nothing to hide.
Yeah. And I'm good enough just as I am.
Yeah. I will
So
I will talk about your I am. I love it. And I'll give you two stories. First of all, for everybody watching this, it's I am Jake Kauffman on Instagram, which I love because I am Travis Ritchie on Instagram, which I
yeah,
thought was kind of interesting. And when I talked to, and I had a phone call today with a gentleman, I have this note in my phone, and it's like your egotistical note. And it talks about I am. It's you can call it, manifesting, you can call it, and any of these different things that are now sexy and fun to put on
sure.
Instagram, right?
Yeah,
But it talks about all the things that I am. I am a worthy father. I am a present husband. I am retired at this age. And it talks about all of these things. And so when you talk about, I just am, one of the things that I'd
mhm,
love you to start with unpacking how you got there. Most guys that I come in contact with, and I'd love your input, don't feel that they're worthy of the success that they desire in their own.
sure.
Where,
Mm.
how did you become worthy of that own success to where you're comfortable in your skin? And how do other people who haven't unpacked that baggage yet, how do they become worthy of the success that they really desire?
Well, I think it's because I died to the need for it in many ways.
Yeah,
In reality, there is no Jake Kauffman
interesting.
because I died to that person a long time ago, right? This person who was a three-sport athlete in high school and college and excelled in academics and became incredibly successful in business and in career. And I died to that person a long time ago. There is no Jake Kauffman. There is God doing God's will through me. That's it.
Mm,
And so in the process of that, I died to my need for money, for success. Obviously, I have bills to pay.
yeah,
Those don't go away, but it's kind of a paradox, isn't it? The next level only makes you want the next level, more only makes you want more. And so I just kind of stopped focusing on it. And when you stop focusing on success, on money, on abundance, whatever that looks like for you, well, then you do what is most natural and authentic to you. And by virtue, that brings success. Right?
man.
It's kind of backwards, isn't it?
No, no, it's actually not. It's actually not. I believe I have these buckets: mental, physical, emotional, financial, spiritual, and
Uh-huh.
sexual. And I think,
Sure.
I coach my entrepreneurs to say, if your goal this year is 1.4 million, if you get to 1.5, but four of your buckets are empty, are you really happy at 1.5? But if
No,
you get to
right.
1.27 and all of
Mhm.
your buckets are overflowing, like, which one is it? Which one do you really want?
It's a valuable question because most are sacrificing one for the sake of the other.
Why do we do that though?
In short,
Mhm.
because we're overcompensating.
Yeah. And is that because of childhood, because of friends, because of the neighbor, because of social? D, all the above?
Well, because we haven't died yet,
Unpack that.
right? So when we're really young, when we're children, the most important question that we seek to answer is, what do I need to do? Who do I need to be? And how do I need to be perceived in order to be loved and accepted by mom and dad? And so this has us take on characteristics and traits of who we think we need to be, not who we authentically are. This, of course, becomes our personality. Well, personality derives from the Latin word persona, which just means mask. So our personality is ultimately the masks that we wear. This theme just continues. In adolescence, the question just evolves to, who do I need to be? What do I need to do? And how do I need to be perceived in order to be admired and accepted by my peers? And then this just continues on into career. Who do I need to be? What do I need to do? And how do I need to be perceived in order to be successful? So you realize very quickly that our personality is not who we are authentically, it's who we've become, who we think we need to be in order to be loved, accepted, admired, and successful. It's our false self or our ego. That's just what the ego is, right? I'm not talking about ego in terms of arrogance here. I'm talking about ego in terms of the false self, who we think we need to be in order to achieve all of those things. But that takes us away from authenticity, because you realize very quickly that while our personality is made up of genuine characteristics and traits, of course, it's an amalgamation of traits that are in response to pain or in the avoidance of pain. Because what's on the opposite side of not being loved? It's to be, rejected or hated. What's on the opposite end of, not being accepted or successful? It's to be a failure, right? So we take on these personality traits in order to avoid all of those things. So they're not actually genuine characteristics or traits. They're in response to pain.
Hmm.
And until we heal that pain and we break free of those personality traits, our trauma is just going to continue to do the choosing for us until we reconcile the pain from the past. We're just going to continue to recycle it into the present moment. That's what I mean by dying. I mean dying to this false self, this admired identity that is not actually us, but we think it's us, right? Because our ego becomes so attached to it that it doesn't know who we are apart from it. Like, who am I apart from my need to perform? Who am I apart from my job? Who am I apart from the money in my bank account? Who am I apart from being an athlete and all these other different, these things that we hang our worthiness on, or attach our identity to? That's what I mean by dying. It's a
Man,
metaphorical dying
that is
that very
profound.
that very few people ever actually go through, because it's so inherently painful.
Yeah, that's a
Necessary suffering.
necessary suffering. Yeah. Yeah, it's
That's
interesting.
what
Jordan
Carl Jung referred
Peterson,
to it.
say it again, sorry.
That's what Carl Jung referred to, that we all need to experience and go through in order to die to our false self, so that we can, so that we can return to our true and authentic self.
Man, it's so funny you said that. When I was cutting you off, Jordan Peterson, he makes that, and I think he gets it from you, and where he says, life is a series of events that are suffering.
Yeah.
And a lot of us don't like to think it that way. We like to think of it as, it's a Saturday night get together, it's a Friday night date night, it's a Sunday barbecue, it's a series of positive events that make
Yep.
us, this persona, this personality, this mask. But
Hmm.
life in its truest, most authentic form, in the realness of it, life is a series of suffering events.
100%. Yeah. True transformation happens by way of two primary avenues: great love or great suffering.
Mm, man, that's good. Talk to me about the book, Let Love In. What was the
There it
premise
is.
for it?
So,
Show it up again.
facts.
Put it up again.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
So, when I was 12 or 13, I was sexually abused at Christian summer camp. And as you can probably imagine, it was very devastating, very painful. And there were a lot of different layers to it, as there is with most trauma. There's what happened before it happened, there's what actually happened, there's what was going on around you while it happened, and there's, of course, what happened after the fact. That all contributes to this incredibly painful event. And even if you didn't experience big T trauma, this is still true, because we all have emotional trauma, like the beliefs, the stories that we make up about ourselves that limit us or hold us back in some area or different areas of life. And so after that, I started to wear all these different masks in order to self protect, to ensure that that never happened again.
Okay.
So I started to do what most men do. I acted as if I was fine. I acted as if I have it all together. I acted as if I was successful, even though inside I was dying and I didn't know peace, because I was just running away from my pain, or I was, better put, I was performing my way around it. I'll be the star athlete. I'll excel in academics. I'll buy the clothes and project this image, this persona, this mask that I have it all together, so that you can't hurt me. And all of this was happening unconsciously, mind you, because as a 12 or 13-year-old, you don't have the mental resources to know what to do with that amount of pain. And it wasn't until I was in my late 20s, 15 years later, that I found myself repeating patterns. And even though I didn't have the language for it at the time, what I would tell my clients now is that the pattern always reveals the problem. And so it forced me to take a look underneath the hood, if you will, do some introspective interpersonal work to determine, like, what's behind this? Like, what's causing this? What's causing me to push away love? What's causing me to fear intimacy and connection?
Mm,
What's causing me to self-sabotage in romantic relationship when the relationship gets to a certain point or a certain depth or degree? My average was like 6 months, and after that, right when the mask needs to come off, right, for all of us, that's when I would find some, however minute reason or insignificant reason to break it off. And so I needed to really analyze why this was going on, and where it came from, what was underneath it or behind it. Because, of course, it was showing up in every area of my life, not just with romantic partners, but with my friends, with my family, in career and business. I would sabotage my success. I got fired from probably every profession, not probably, I did get fired from every professional job I've ever had until I started to work for myself. And so, in the course of my self discovery and working with a therapist, I realized, oh, all of this self sabotage, it's just self protection to ensure that I don't ever get taken advantage of like that again.
whoa.
Yeah.
And it wasn't,
Conscious behavior, unconscious motivation.
man, that's incredible. And do you find that, you don't have to have experience, that level of trauma that you went through to have to self-sabotage.
No, 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 no. Because trauma is way more about how we internalize what happened to us as opposed to what happened to us. Most people have not experienced big T trauma, assault, abuse, an acute accident, like a car accident or something like that. It's actually the rarest form of trauma. But emotional trauma has happened to all of us, because it is has very little to do with what happened, and everything to do with how we internalized it, the stories and the beliefs that we made up about it as a result. So this can be a simple comment that someone made to you when you were a little kid or a young teenager, for example, what makes you think you can do that? Very simple comment, seemingly innocent comment that can be taken in different ways, but that can absolutely shatter one's self-confidence, one's self-esteem. And then, of course, that person just continues to carry that around until they do the necessary interpersonal work, healing work to undo the belief or the story that that comment from a friend, from a family member created in them that causes them to struggle later on in life. And so, to answer your question, no, you don't need to have experienced a significant big T trauma. Little t trauma is much more prevalent and arguably just as sinister.
Hmm. And that's what we've all experienced.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why the work that I do, and it sounds like you do as well with your clients, is so important, because to go back and quote Jung, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to direct your life and you will call it fate.
Oh man. Whoa. Does he go deeper on that? Say that again.
Until you make the unconscious conscious, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to direct your life and you will call it fate.
Whoa.
Because a lot of the beliefs and the stories that we pick up very, very young. Over 70% of our cognitive development happens between when we're 2 and 7. Most of these stories and beliefs are picked up from our parents or from the people that we are most closely associated with or surround ourselves with when we're growing up. So we're not even aware that they exist, because our beliefs actually reside in our unconscious mind.
Hmm.
So we're not even aware that they're running the show until we really start to take a deeper look at our results, or until we start to work with a coach, a therapist, or some type of clinician who can provide a mirror to us and point out our blind spots and say, hey, have you ever thought more about what's behind that? That's what happened with me. I started working with a therapist. I started talking about this fear of intimacy and how I was holding everybody at arm's length. And he's like, have you ever thought about what was behind that? I was like, no, not really. And he was like, well, talk to me about like your upbringing and, any painful experiences that you had growing up. And I just kind of skipped over the whole sexual abuse thing because I
Yeah.
didn't know how to process it. So what did I do? I just repressed it. So I never really dealt with the pain, with the resentment, with the bitterness, with the sadness from that experience. And it wasn't until I acknowledged the event for what it actually was that I was able to grieve it and therefore transcend it. And so this is why doing this interpersonal work is the key to, I hate to say getting everything that you want, but
But it
at the
is
end
the
of the
key
day,
to fulfillment. It is the key.
yeah, it is. But, I say that to say you never want what you want what it's
What
going
it,
to provide you.
yes. Yeah. What it represents. Yeah.
Correct. I want more money so that I can be more at peace.
Yeah.
We're all after a feeling, and at the end of the day, it's just perfect peace.
Yeah.
So if we really boil it down, this is the key to getting everything that you want that will ultimately lead you to perfect peace.
There it is. That's that's man, that's good.
And so this is all about my story and how I overcame my pain, my past, my limiting beliefs
Mhm.
that I created about myself as a result of the abuse that occurred, that I continued to carry around with me, that held me back from being the man that I was created to be, stepping into my true authenticity. Because that's what pain does. It's a fracture. And we just continue to seek to protect that. The number one goal of the ego is to maintain the status quo. And how does it do that? It hides the truth from us. I was not aware of the fact that all of this behavior stemmed from this incident. and how I internalized that incident until I had someone to support me. And the minute I became conscious of that, then I was able to do something about it. Now I owned it. Before that, it owned me.
Controlled the narrative.
Oh,
Man, that's beautiful. Um, you talked about God, you talked about being, I find few guys like myself will enjoy talking about deity in general, for some reason. And, you talked about just being a vessel to do what you're supposed to do here on earth. So a lot of the questions that I get, they center around unfairness
hmm.
and, the bad things, good things, bad people type of
Sure, sure,
analogy,
sure.
right? So,
Yeah, this is a fun one.
yeah. So without further ado, unpack it. I mean, where do you put that in your own life?
Hmm.
I mean, I obviously wrestled with it. The people know how I wrestled with it. I mean, I drove around the
Hmm.
city for 6 years in tears in my Jaguar convertible with the top down, just pretending I had meetings to go to because I felt so lost and confused and had guilt and had shame and you know
Sure.
and
Yeah.
so where did you
All
put
is
it down?
grace.
Go ahead.
All is grace.
Hmm. What do you mean?
Well, acceptance and rejection, they go together. When we push away one, we push away both.
Give me an
Failure and
example.
success. Failure and success, they go together. Well, if you think about it, for example, if I'm afraid of being rejected in a relationship, what am I not going to do?
Ask them out or pursue them or
Bingo. Yep. So inevitably, I get rejected because I'm just rejecting myself.
well played.
Two sides of the same coin, light and dark, go together. Love and hatred go together. Success and failure, they go together. Whenever we push away one, we push away both. This is law. It's the law of polarity. Everything in the universe has an opposite. Therefore, all is grace. When a wolf jumps out of the woods and it kills a deer, we don't make up a story about that, right? It just is. It's nature being nature, right? But when, we get abused,
Mm.
or when someone makes a terrible comment to us or wrongs us, we make up a story about it. And that's what we continue to carry around long after the initial pain of the incident has passed. That's the limiting beliefs that you and I talked about before we even pressed record, that people carry around, and they live the same year 70 times and they call it a life.
78 birthdays, right? How many of them are actually spent living what you're supposed to be doing?
Right. Because pain blocks us from purpose, it blocks us from potential, and it blocks us from love. So that's what this book is all about. It's a blueprint, it's a guidebook, if you will, to back to your true and authentic self, who you were before the pain, which is simply a return to authenticity and purpose.
Mm.
Transformation is so much more about unbecoming than it is about becoming.
Unbecoming a lot of those limiting beliefs, unbecoming what your parents had questioned you or told you should do.
Bingo. Yep. We think that reaching our highest potential is all about achieving our way there, when in reality, it's all about dying your way there.
Mm. It's interesting you mentioned that. So much of my piece, so many of my comments, my life on a day to day, if you were with me, is is centered around my little ones. So
Mhm.
for a lot of the people that get out of bed at 4 a.m., I love that. But for me, I actually sometimes just lay there in bed until they all wake up because I want them to come in and cuddle.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
as someone like myself and yourself that wants to light the world on fire, I wrestle with those thoughts, and I've shared that with my wife. Like, I wrestle
Hmm.
with those thoughts because so much of what I'm told and seen and has been ingrained in me is, to wake up early and to go and to do. But best, my best mornings are when all
Yeah.
three of my little girls under the age of 7, are telling me about their dreams and are in there in their little, cute silky pajamas. And, we're
Yeah.
just feeling for the first 30 or 40 minutes. And my 2-year-old says, hold me.
Hmm.
Those are better than any deals that I can structure before 9 a.m. Those are better than any
Right.
stock tips that I can grab before the market opens.
Yep. And because you can't get those things back, you can always make more money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you and I both know that. We both won and lost quite a bit.
Oh, big time. I mean, not that there's anything wrong or bad about this high performance stage that you referred to,
Oh.
essentially, that most men are driven by.
Mhm.
But the issue with that is the hyper masculine game that most men rely upon in order to become successful was always meant to fall apart.
Hmm.
The problem is most men get stuck there.
Was always meant to fall apart. No kidding.
100%. It was always meant to fall apart
Man, that's deep. That's a lot to chew on.
because I mean, I've been doing this work for over half a decade now.
It's unsustainable. Not your
Correct.
work, but the hyper masculine subscription.
Correct. Yeah. Because it's all about pushing, striving, overreaching, overcompensating.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it allows many a man to become incredibly successful. But
Mhm.
I can tell you right now, I've been coaching men like that for 8+ years now, and very, very few of them know peace.
It's interesting you say that. A lot of people will know this, so I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. Is I
Yeah.
had a guy that just exited recently, nine
Yep.
figures, and
Sure.
I got a phone call about 30 days ago because he was on the front page of the news, had just taken his life and tried to take his wife's. Um, and
Happens all the time.
happens all the time, right? And so I'll tell you that what I have found, love your perspective because it's always good to be in a boat with someone else rowing the same direction.
Yeah.
Most of my questions or most of my wife's questions, Jay, the
Uh,
people who will ask my wife the real, like, does he have a job? Does he work? He's always in flip-flops. He's always at the park. He's always in the
yeah.
pool. But what I'll tell you, Jake, is when they come over, and this is forget about the toys and the fun and the watches. The best thing for me, Jake, is when people come in my house and they go, man, it just feels different here.
Hmm. I posted this on social media yesterday, and I think this will ultimately answer your question. I said the success of a man is ultimately measured by how he feels while sitting in silence in a room alone. It never fails. I've coached hundreds of men. That is the hardest homework that I will ever give them. Not opening up to their wives and having a deep, vulnerable conversation with them, right? Not taking a week vacation because they haven't taken one in years and they're, they're used to working all the time. It's spending an hour in silence in a room alone doing nothing, because that's when they're forced to confront who they really are or who they've become.
Yeah, who they become.
They're forced to be with their pain,
Mm,
right? Most men are just performing their way around their pain. They're just doing so unconsciously, right? And that's why after 10, 20, 30 years, our greatest strength is oftentimes an adaptation or an overcompensation to avoid dealing with our pain.
man, that's good. Where can everybody find the book?
So the book is available on Amazon. Let Love In, Jacob Kauffman. Kauffman. Otherwise, you can get it on my website, awakewithjake.com. So that's AWAKE with Jake.com. Otherwise, it's all over my social media.
It is. No, it's fantastic. I hope you continue to crush it. I'll end on this question. 78 birthdays, like we mentioned, and I often say
Sure.
nobody's little ones stand around the headstone and tell the story of dad being a great 9 to 5er. That's typically not the narrative when everything goes back in the box, people and assets.
Hmm.
So the headstone has unlimited space.
Yeah.
What does yours say? What do you hope it says? What do you hope they say?
I don't really know that I need one.
It's my
I
first time I've
mean,
gotten that one. I love it.
Alexander the Great, when he died, he instructed his servants to line the path to his grave with all of his earthly riches, and the casket was to be left open, and his hands were be propped outside of it to show exactly what you just described, that he came into this world with nothing and he leaves with nothing.
Hmm.
So I don't really know that I need a headstone. I mean, I love the idea of, leaving behind the world better than I found it. Of
Of course,
course,
of course.
my life is one of service, absolutely. But yeah, I think this would probably be the better way to go about it. Um, let the people whose lives I've impacted decide what's written on my headstone.
That's rad. I love that. That's probably the best answer I've gotten. Well done, sir. Jake Kauffman. I'm inspired. I've got a notebook here of notes. Hundreds of thousands of people will hear this. I hope and pray that they reach out to you on social, through your website. I hope that they reach out to you to go through their traumas, for you to coach them. I hope that you continue to make the world a better place. I'm grateful for you. I love you. And I hope
Thank you,
this is
sir.
the first of many.
Appreciate it.